Jack walked slowly through the silent ruins of the old alien base. His boots crunched on the broken metal floor as dust floated in the stale air. He held a small flashlight in one hand and a scanner in the other. The scanner beeped now and then, showing weak energy signals, but so far, he had found nothing useful, just broken tech and empty halls. Jack wasn't here for treasure. He was a salvage worker. Cleaning up what others had left behind after the war, this moon had been forgotten, like so many others. But something felt different about this place. There was a strange feeling in the air, like someone was watching. He turned a corner and froze. His light fell on a thick metal door, half rusted and sealed tight. Strange alien symbols were painted on it in red. His scanner beeped loudly as it picked up a life signal very weak. But still there. Jack's heart beat faster. Was it a trap? A creature? He didn't know, but something inside told him not to turn away. He found a control panel beside the door and connected his tablet with a few taps. Sparks flew from the old circuits and the heavy door slowly opened. Smoke and cold air rolled out, and the smell of blood and chemicals hit him. Inside was a small room, dark and dirty. In the center was a cage, and inside that cage, curled up like a dying animal, was a small alien girl. She had pale skin with a faint glow, long silver hair tangled with dirt, and large golden eyes that looked too tired to cry. She didn't move at first. Then she lifted her head, and their eyes met. Jack stepped closer slowly. The girl flinched and tried to crawl back, but there was no space. Her thin arms shook as she held the bars. He spoke gently. "Hey, I'm not here to hurt you." She blinked, then asked in a weak voice, "Are you human?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, I am." She lowered her eyes. "They said humans were kind," she whispered. "But they killed my mother." Jack didn't know what to say. He stepped back, feeling a wave of guilt and confusion. What was a child doing in a place like this? He looked at the cage. The lock was old, and the warning above it said, "Danger, do not open." He hesitated, then said to himself, "I don't care what the sign says." He broke the lock with his tools, and the cage door creaked open. The girl didn't move. Jack kneeled and said, "It's okay now. You can come out." Slowly, the girl crawled forward. Her legs were weak, and she collapsed into his arms. Jack caught her gently. She was so light, like she hadn't eaten in days. "I'm going to take you out of here," he said, lifting her up as he turned to leave. She whispered something barely loud enough to hear. "Can you be my dad?" Jack stopped. His breath caught in his throat. Of all the things he expected to hear, that was not one of them. He looked down at her, her eyes half closed, her face bruised, and still so full of hope. She wasn't asking for a soldier, a doctor, or a hero. She was asking for something much deeper. Jack started, but the words failed him. Outside, the scanner beeped again louder. Someone or something knew he had opened the cage. There was no time to think. He carried the girl in his arms and ran back through the dark halls. Behind him, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed on the walls, and metal doors slammed shut around them. Jack jumped over broken beams and ducked under collapsing pipes. The girl held onto him tightly, her face buried in his chest. He reached his ship, slammed the door shut, and launched into space. Only when they were far away from the moon did he finally breathe. He looked at the sleeping girl in the seat beside him. Could he really be her dad? He didn't know. But one thing was clear. He couldn't leave her behind. She had been caged, broken, and forgotten. But now, she had someone, and so did he. The stars outside the window moved slowly as Jack's ship floated through deep space. Inside, everything was quiet. Jack sat in the pilot's chair, but he wasn't flying. He was watching the girl. She was asleep on the small bench behind him. Wrapped in an old gray blanket, he still didn't know her name. Only that she had been trapped in a cage for who knows how long. She looked peaceful now, but her small hands were still clenched. Even in her sleep, she seemed afraid. Jack turned off the autopilot and walked over to her. He sat on the floor beside the bench. Then, slowly and carefully, he said, "Hey, can you hear me?" The girl opened her golden eyes slowly. Her voice was soft, like she hadn't spoken in years. "You didn't leave," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "No, I didn't. I thought maybe you would," she said. "Everyone else does." Jack smiled a little. "I guess I'm not like everyone else." The girl sat up with effort, her legs still shaking. She looked around the ship, then back at him. "Are you really human?" She asked again. "Yes," Jack replied. "All human." She studied his face, as if trying to find the truth in his eyes. Then she asked, "Why didn't you kill me?" Jack blinked, surprised. "I'd never hurt a child." He said, "Never." The girl's lip trembled, and she looked away. "They said humans don't care about alien children." She said, "They told me I was dangerous, a mistake, a thing to study or throw away." Jack's heart ached at her words. He leaned forward and said softly, "That's not true. Not all humans are like that." She hugged her knees and whispered, "They lied to me then." There was a long silence. Jack didn't want to push her, but he had to ask, "What's your name?" She blinked, confused. "Name? Yeah, like what people call you," Jack explained. "I don't have one," she said quietly. "They just called me 42 Beta." Jack frowned. "That's not a name. That's a number." She nodded. "They didn't think I needed anything else," Jack thought for a moment, then smiled gently. "What if I give you a name?" Her eyes widened a little. "You'd give me one?" "Of course," Jack said. "Everyone deserves a name." He looked at the stars out the window, then back at her glowing eyes. "You look like a Lyra," he said. "Bright and full of light." She repeated it softly, like tasting the word. Lyra then, for the first time, she smiled. A small, shy smile, but real. "Do you like it?" Jack asked. She nodded. "It's the first thing that's really mine." Before Jack could respond, an alert beeped from the console. He walked over quickly. A signal someone was pinging his ship. "Trouble?" Lyra asked, her voice suddenly nervous. Jack checked the screen. It was a small message repeating over and over, "Unauthorized biological cargo detected. Return immediately." Jack cursed under his breath. "They know I took you." Lyra's face went pale. "They'll come for me," she whispered. "They'll hurt you too. Let them try." Jack growled. "I'm not giving you back," Lyra looked at him like she couldn't believe what he just said. "No one's ever said that before," she said. "Not even my mother had time to promise that." Jack walked back and knelt in front of her. "I don't know what they want from you or who you really are," he said. "But I know this, you don't deserve to be in a cage." Her lip trembled again, and she suddenly reached out and grabbed his shirt. "Don't let them take me," she whispered. "Please." He placed a hand gently over hers. "I won't," he said. "I swear it." A tear rolled down Lyra's cheek. Then, "Can I stay with you?" she asked, her voice shaking forever. Jack felt something deep inside him shift. He wasn't ready to be a father. But this girl, this broken, brave little soul, had already made her place in his heart. "Yes, Lyra," he said, "you can stay with me." And as the stars moved outside the ship, Lyra laid her head against his shoulder for the first time in her life. She felt safe, but far away. Someone was watching, and they had no intention of letting her go so easily. The ship shook slightly as it moved through a thick asteroid field. Jack kept his hands tight on the controls, dodging chunks of space rock while trying to keep the signal scrambled. Behind him, Lyra sat quietly, her knees pulled up to her chest. Watching him with wide golden eyes. "They're still chasing us?" she asked softly. Jack nodded. "Yeah, they're fast, but we're smarter." He added with a small smile, trying to calm her. Lyra didn't smile back. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the blanket around her. They never stop. She said once they find you, they don't stop until they catch you or kill you. Jack glanced back at her. Who are they, Lyra? He asked. I need to know what we're up against. Lyra lowered her eyes. They were scientists once. She said, working for the High Order. They studied my mother, called her dangerous, then locked her away. And when she died, they took me. Jack's hands gripped the controls tighter. You're not dangerous, he said firmly. Lyra looked at him again, tears forming in her eyes. They said I was a weapon, she whispered. A living key. Jack frowned. Key to what? I don't know, she said, shaking her head. Something old. Something hidden, but I can feel it inside me, like it's calling me. Before Jack could ask more, the ship's alarm blared loudly. He looked at the screen. 3 ships were on their tail, fast and heavily armed. Time to stop talking, he said, flipping switches fast. Hold on. The ship spun sharply, weaving between massive asteroids. The enemy ships followed, firing plasma bolts that lit up the dark space. Jack flew low, using the rocks for cover. But the shots kept coming closer. One blast hit the rear engine, and the ship jolted violently, damage to stabilizer. The onboard AI announced. Jack cursed. I need to land somewhere fast. He pulled up the star map and spotted a nearby moon, mostly uninhabited and covered in deep canyons. Perfect for hiding if they could get there in time. Lyra, strap in, he shouted. This is going to be rough. The girl obeyed without question. Her eyes locked on him with complete trust. As Jack pushed the engines harder, the ship trembled, sparks flying from the panels behind them. One enemy ship exploded as it clipped a large asteroid, but the other 2 stayed locked on them, closing in. Jack flew low into the moon's atmosphere, fighting the pull of gravity as smoke filled the cockpit. The ship hit the surface hard, skidding across rocky ground. Sparks flew, metal screamed, and everything went dark. Silence. Then, a soft cough. Jack opened his eyes, head spinning. Lyra. He called out weakly. I'm okay. Her voice came from the other side, shaky, but alive. He stumbled toward her and helped her out of the broken harness. We need to move, he said. If they tracked us here, they'll send ground troops next. He grabbed supplies, a small med kit, and his old pulse rifle. Then he looked at Lyra and hesitated. She looked so small, standing in the ruined ship. But her eyes were calm. I can walk, she said quietly. I'm not as weak as I look. Jack nodded and led the way out into the dusty canyon. They climbed through rocks and found a small cave to hide in. For a while, they sat in silence, listening for sounds of pursuit. The moon was quiet. Too quiet, Lyra leaned against the cave wall, her body shaking slightly from exhaustion. Jack handed her a protein bar and water as she ate slowly. She looked up at him and whispered, Why did you come back for me? Jack blinked, surprised. What do you mean? You could have left me in the cage, she said. You didn't have to risk your life. Jack sighed. I don't know, he said honestly. I just couldn't walk away. Something in me said you didn't belong there. Lyra stared at him, then said, You were the first one to call me by a name. You gave me Lyra. Jack looked down, unsure how to respond. Then she whispered again, the same question from the ship. Can I still call you Dad? Jack froze. The word hit him harder now, after everything to running. The danger? The pain. This child still wanted him to be something he'd never been before. Slowly, he nodded. Yeah, he said, his voice rough. You can, Lyra's eyes glowed with a soft golden light, and for the first time, she leaned into him on her own. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she didn't flinch this time, but far above them, enemy scanners began sweeping the canyon. Their time was running out. Dust rose in the early light of the moon as Jack moved carefully along the edge of the canyon. His pulse rifle was in his hands, eyes scanning every rock and shadow. Behind him, Lyra stayed quiet, stepping exactly where he stepped. She didn't ask questions, she already knew. They were being hunted. All night, Jack had listened to the faint humming sounds in the sky. Drones, scanning for heat signatures. They had avoided them so far. But it was only a matter of time before something got too close. "We can't stay in that cave," Jack whispered. "It's too open," Lyra nodded, then stopped. She placed her small hand against the stone wall and closed her eyes. "What are you doing?" Jack asked. "I'm listening," she said, her voice quiet but focused. "There are tunnels below, mining shafts from before the war." Jack looked around, surprised. "How do you know that?" "I don't know how," Lyra said. "I just feel it." Jack didn't question it. She had done strange things before opening locked doors without touching them. Healing small cuts overnight. He was starting to believe she wasn't just a child. She was something more. Lyra pointed to a crack between two boulders. "There," she said. "It leads down." Jack squeezed through the opening, pulling Lyra in behind him. Inside was darkness and stale air, but also safety. They climbed down into the forgotten mine, guided only by the faint glow of Lyra's eyes. As they walked deeper, Jack thought back to everything he had seen in the last few days. Lyra's power, her past, the people who wanted her back. None of it made sense, but one thing was clear. He couldn't let her go. They found an old storage room underground and rested. Jack set traps near the entrance and powered up a small signal jammer from his pack. While he worked, Lyra sat quietly in the corner, hugging her knees. Her golden eyes didn't blink much. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked suddenly. Jack looked over, surprised. "Yeah, sometimes," he said. "But there wasn't much for me back there. No family." She asked. He shook his head. "No one left." Lyra looked down. "I think I miss my mother," she whispered, "even though I barely remember her." Jack walked over and sat beside her. "She would be proud of you," he said. "You're strong." "I'm scared," she whispered. "They're coming, aren't they?" Jack nodded slowly. "Yes, they're coming, but I'm here," he added. "And I'm not going anywhere." Before Lyra could respond, the warning trap beeped once, then went silent. Jack's body tensed. "They're here," he whispered. He grabbed his rifle and pressed his ear to the wall. Boots, metal boots, echoing through the tunnel above. "Stay here," he told Lyra. "No matter what, don't come out." But Lyra stood too. "I can help," she said, her voice steady. "You don't understand what I can do." Jack looked at her, torn between fear and trust. He didn't want her in danger, but he also knew she wasn't helpless. "Stay close," he finally said. They moved to the entrance of the tunnel. 3 armored soldiers dropped in black suits, red visors and weapons ready. Their voices echoed through the tunnel. "Return the specimen and you won't be harmed." Jack aimed his rifle and shouted, "She's not your property." The lead soldier stepped forward. "She belongs to the Order," he said. "That child holds secrets older than Earth itself." Lyra stepped out from behind Jack. "No," she said, her voice like a bell. "I belong to no one." The soldier raised his weapon too fast, but Lyra raised her hand faster. A wave of invisible force knocked the soldiers off their feet. Their helmets sparked, lights dimmed, and the tunnel itself shook. Jack stared, stunned. "Lyra, what was that?" "Don't know," she said, "but I think I've always had it." The soldiers groaned, trying to rise. Jack raised his weapon again, but Lyra touched his arm. "They won't wake up for a while," she said. "We should leave." They climbed back up, moving fast through the canyon, until they reached a small rocky hill. From the top, they saw more ships in the sky, slowly circling the moon. Jack looked at Lyra. They won't stop, will they? No, she said, because I'm the last of something they're afraid of. Jack turned toward the horizon where his ship had crashed. I have an idea, he said, but it's going to take some serious work. Lyra looked up at him. I'll help, she said. You saved me, Dad. Jack felt the word hit again dadness time. It felt right. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war for a future, her future. The wrecked ship still sat half buried in the rocky dust. Its hull cracked, its engine smoking. Jack stood beside it, tools in hand. His shirt covered in grease and burns. Lyra crouched nearby, holding a broken panel, watching him closely. They had returned in secret, moving under moonlight, avoiding drones and searchlights. Jack had a plan, dangerous and desperate, but their only chance. He could repair the old ship's power core and link it to the communication array. They could. Send a message not to ask for help, but to reveal the truth. You sure about this? Jack asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Lyra nodded. You said we need to show them who I am. Yeah, Jack said. We need to let the galaxy see what they tried to hide. But deep inside, Jack wasn't just thinking about proof. He was afraid of what might happen if they pushed too far. There were still things about Lyra even she didn't understand. Do you feel different? He asked her. Lyra paused, then placed a hand on her chest. There's something inside, she said, like a voice, but not words. It's old. Like it's been sleeping a long time. Jack stared at her. You mean like an A? She shook her head. Not machine. More like memory. Jack frowned, but didn't push further. He connected the power core to the ship's cracked console, sparks flying as the lights flickered on. All right, he said. Let's record, Lyra. Stepped forward and stood tall in front of the blinking red light. She took a deep breath and began. My name is Lyra, she said. I am the daughter of Queen Enya of the Cerati line. I was taken, caged, and hidden. They called me a weapon, but I am not. I am a child. Jack watched her, heart pounding. She wasn't the scared girl from the cage anymore. She was becoming something more stronger, braver, clearer. I don't want war, she said. But I will not be hidden anymore. She lifted her hand and without touching the ship, the display behind her glowed. Ancient alien symbols danced. Across the screen, language not seen in thousands of years, Jack gasped. What is that? I don't know, Lyra whispered, her eyes glowing. It's coming through me. The message uploaded, bouncing from the wrecked antenna toward a passing cargo satellite above. Within hours, it would spread broadcast to black market traders, scavengers, and curious eyes across the fringe. But that also meant they had painted a target on their backs. Suddenly, the console beeped news signal incoming. Jack checked the screen and his blood went cold. It's them, he said. Fast movers, 6 ships. Armed Lyra stood beside him. Not afraid this time, they'll try to take me again, she said. Or destroy everything before others see the message. Jack loaded his rifle. We won't let them, he said, as the ships entered the sky above. Their engines roared like thunder. Jack pulled Lyra close. We can't outgun them, he said, but maybe we can outsmart them. He pulled her toward a nearby ridge, the perfect place to bait them. He left the ship's lights on, wide open, as if they were waiting there. Then he activated one last trick, a beacon bomb he had hidden years ago. Something illegal, unstable, and powerful enough to fry nearby electronics. They hid behind rocks, watching as the enemy landed. 6 armored soldiers stormed out. Scanning the wreck, weapons ready, Jack held the trigger, sweat dripping from his fingers. Lyra touched his arm. I can help, she whispered again, before he could answer, she stepped out of hiding. No, Lyra? Jack whispered sharply, reaching to stop her, but she stood there, glowing slightly, arms raised. The soldiers turned to her and raised their rifles. Then, the lights on their suits began to flicker. One by one, their weapons shut down. Their visors sparked. Their armor froze in place. Jack stared in disbelief. She hadn't touched them. Hadn't spoken a word, just stood there, and they fell. The last soldier dropped to his knees, whispering something in fear. She's the key. She's awake. Then Jack pressed the beacon detonator. A burst of energy exploded across the ridge. Frying the enemy ships and their systems, silence returned. Smoke filled the air, and Lyra stood quietly, her hair floating slightly like she was still charged. With energy, Jack ran to her, checking her arms, her face. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly, but her voice was different, calmer, I think. "I remember now," she said. What they were afraid of, Jack looked at her, confused. "What?" Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. "My mother's blood," she said. "It wasn't just royal, it was bonded to something ancient, something that lives inside me now." Jack backed up a step, not out of fear, but awe. "You're more than just a child," he whispered. Lyra looked up at him, her expression softening. "But I still want to be one," she said quietly. "I still want you to be my dad." Jack stepped forward and hugged her tight. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, and above them, the message kept traveling, spreading like fire. The galaxy would know. The hunters would come, but Lyra wasn't running anymore. She was ready. The message had spread far beyond the stars, across quiet traders' channels and pirate networks. People were talking about a child with glowing eyes, a human who shielded her, and a ruined empire that wanted her erased. Now, every bounty hunter in the Outer Rim wanted her head, but Jack and Lyra were not running anymore. They had returned to the ruins of her mother's palace, or what was left of it, a stone crown broken by war, standing in silence at the heart of an abandoned world. "This is where she died," Lyra whispered. Walking barefoot across cracked marble, Jack followed close behind, watching every shadow, every movement. He had seen ambushes before. This place felt like one waiting to happen. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "There's something here," she said. "A memory. Not mine, but hers." They stepped into the great hall, now roofless and buried in dust. At the center stood a single throne, shattered, rusted, cold, but as Lyra walked toward it, something changed. The air began to hum, faint lights glowed. Beneath the stone, symbols appeared on the walls, ancient, beautiful, and alive. Jack raised his rifle. Suddenly on edge, "I don't like this," he muttered. Lyra stood in front of the throne and placed her hand on it. The ground trembled slightly, and a soft voice echoed in the air. Not hers, not Jack's, but familiar somehow. "Daughter." Lyra gasped. "It's her," she whispered. "My mother." A hologram appeared, faint and flickering. A tall alien woman, regal and fierce, stood above the broken throne. She looked at Lyra with sad, proud eyes. "If you are hearing this, then I am gone," the voice said. "And you, my child, are all that remains of the Serati blood." Jack watched silently, feeling the weight of history press down on them. "You were never meant to be a weapon," the Queen's voice said. "You were meant to be a bridge, a bond between worlds." Then the image faded, the lights vanished, and the hall fell silent again. But Lyra stood straighter now. "She believed in me," she said, "even if she couldn't protect me." Jack stepped beside her. "I believe in you too," he said. "We stand together." Suddenly crack. A blast echoed from outside. Then another. Jack ran to the door and peeked out. Dozens of soldiers in black armor were landing. Their leader walked tall in silver armor, his face hidden behind a mirrored mask. Beside him, war drones floated in formation, weapons hot and blinking. They sent the executioner. Jack muttered, his blood turning cold. He doesn't capture, he ends things. Lyra stepped beside him. "We don't run this time," she said softly. "This place. It's mine." Jack nodded slowly. "Then we defend it." He took position behind a fallen pillar and aimed. Lyra walked calmly to the throne and stood in front of it like a guardian. The executioner raised his hand. "Return the child," he shouted, his voice cold through a speaker. "She belongs to the order." Jack shouted back, "She belongs to herself." The first drone opened fire. Jack blasted it from the sky, but more followed. Explosions lit up the ruins. Stone walls crumbled. Smoke rose, but Lyra didn't move. She stood with eyes closed, hands at her sides. Then silence, the next wave of drones froze in midair. Sparks danced around them as their systems glitched and shut down. Jack blinked. "What?" Lyra opened her eyes, now glowing bright gold. The throne behind her lit up again. Symbols covered the floor, pulsing with energy. She raised her hand, then the air itself bent. The enemy soldiers dropped to their knees, weapons turned to ash. The executioner's mask cracked open, revealing a twisted, shocked face. You activated the core," he gasped. Lyra stepped forward. "I didn't activate it." She said, "I became it." He screamed and charged. Blade drawn, Jack tried to shoot, but the weapon jammed. Before the executioner reached her, Lyra raised both hands. A golden wave burst outward, throwing him across the ruins. He hit the ground hard and didn't get up. Silence returned. Jack ran to her. "Are you okay?" Lyra breathed heavily, but nodded. "I feel like I've been holding this in forever," she said. Jack put his hands on her shoulders. "You saved us," he said. "You saved everyone." She looked up at the stars. "Do you think they saw?" Jack smiled. "Oh, they saw," he said. "And they'll talk about what they saw for a long, long time." But Lyra's voice was quiet again, even now. "After all this, still want one thing?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" She looked at him with soft, golden eyes. "I want to be your daughter," she whispered. "Not a queen, not a weapon. Just yours." Jack didn't need to speak. He knelt and hugged her tight, holding her like he'd never let go. And in the heart of broken ruins, father and daughter stood together, not as fugitives, not as threats, but as family. The ruins of the ancient palace were quiet now. Ashes settled in the wind, and the golden lights that once glowed beneath Lyra's feet had faded into silence. But the story was already moving faster than light, all across the outer systems. The name Lyra had become a whisper, then a shout. The child who once lived in a cage now stood tall as the last voice of a fallen bloodline, the spark of something new. But Lyra didn't care about power or titles or the fear in her enemy's eyes. She just wanted to be with Jack. They had left the ruined world quietly, taking what they could from the broken ship. No royal ships followed them. No armies chased them, not anymore. Lyra's message had changed everything. No one wanted to be the first to attack a girl who could crush drones with a thought. Not now that the galaxy was watching. They traveled for weeks across stars and quiet zones, until they found a little blue planet with green fields, thick forests, and no major cities, just peace. A place no one cared about. Perfect. Jack built a small home with his hands, using old tech and local. Would Lyra help floating tools into the air when Jack's back hurt too much? "You're using your powers for very serious work," Jack joked, watching her float a wooden beam into place. Lyra smiled. "You said chores build character." Jack laughed. "I meant cleaning. Not levitating roofs." They laughed more now. Talked more. Lived more. No alarms. No cages. No one calling her a mistake or a weapon. Just birds in the morning. Wind through the trees. And stars that looked beautiful instead of dangerous. At night, Jack sat on the porch and looked at the sky. Lyra would curl beside him with a blanket and ask questions about Earth, about his past, about dreams. One night, she held something close to her chest. A piece of old paper folded gently. "I made this for you," she whispered, handing it to him. Jack opened it and saw a child's drawing shaky lines, big stars, a little house, and in front of the house, a man holding hands with a small alien girl. At the bottom, it said in careful, uneven handwriting, "Me and Dad home." Jack didn't speak. He couldn't. Lyra looked up at him, nervous. "Do you like it?" Jack wiped a tear from his cheek and nodded. "I love it," he said, his voice rough. "It's the best thing I've ever been given." She leaned into him, and they sat together in silence. The next morning, they planted flowers near the house. Jack showed her how to dig small holes and gently place the roots. Lyra tried, but got too excited, making the whole garden bed float 3 feet in the air. "Oops," she giggled, setting it down gently. Jack laughed. "Let's just use shovels today, kiddo." Sometimes they got visitors, travelers passing through, lost ships needing fuel. Many recognized Jack, fewer recognized Lyra. But when they did, they always bowed or stepped back in fear, and every time Jack would say the same thing: "She's not a queen, not a goddess, not a weapon. She's my daughter." And Lyra would just smile shyly and say, "Do you want some tea?" She had picked up Earth's customs, fast loved bread, hated coffee, and still didn't understand why humans wore socks. But Jack let her be herself. Every part of her. One evening, a small alien girl from a visiting ship came running to Lyra. "Is it true you stopped the executioner?" The girl asked. Wide-eyed Lyra blinked, then looked down. "I guess so," she said. "But I was just protecting someone I loved." The little girl looked at Jack, then back at her. "You mean your dad?" Lyra smiled and nodded. "Yeah, that." Night, Jack and Lyra sat by the fire, the stars twinkling above. She held his hand tightly and said, "Do you think I'll ever forget what happened back then?" Jack looked into the flames. "No," he said honestly, "but I think you'll grow past it. Scars don't disappear, but they stop hurting after a while." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Even if the galaxy forgets." "I won't," she said. "I was alone, in the dark, in that cage. And you came back." Jack closed his eyes. "And you called me Dad," he said softly. That changed everything. They sat in peace, and the wind carried no fear. Only the sound of a new life blooming from old pain. Lyra, once known as 42 Beta, had a new name, a new home, and a father who never let go. The galaxy had feared what she might become, but in the end, she became exactly what she needed to be: a daughter. The end.